Welcome. My name is Virginia. I work for an organization called WeMove Europe. WeMove Europe is a digital campaigning organization, but we also call ourselves a community of action. There is a community of action of hundreds of thousands of people across Europe who take digital action at the same time in different parts of the continent. And in fact, I think most of you are part of this community, whether you have signed a petition or whether you have shared one of our petitions with someone else, or you've donated, or you have written to your member of the European Parliament. You have been taking action with hundreds of thousands of others across Europe. And together we've been campaigning around recovery funds for over a year, just like many other movements and organizations. And this is actually a series of webinars, of which this is the first one, which will delve with that matter, with the matter of recovery funds. We will be running them in different languages because that's one of the characteristics of our community. We speak 6 languages: Spanish, French, Polish, German, Italian, and English. So I'm very lucky because 2 experts have agreed to join me today as guests because I'm no expert. They do have all the technical knowledge as well as some fresh intel from Brussels. So I'm just going to introduce them. But before, let me actually do some housekeeping. As I've said already 3 times, but I'm going to repeat it. Please keep yourselves muted rather throughout the session. We are a bunch, and if we unmute ourselves, it might become a bit chaotic. So if you want to ask questions, if you want to comment, please write on the chat. And I would encourage you to do questions at the time of each speaker having finished their presentation. So there will be time for questions for each speaker. I encourage you to write those questions in the chat right when they finished, so that the speaker can look at the questions and decide how they think is best to answer those questions. Also, you might have noticed that we are already recording this session. I hope that's okay. If you don't like being recorded, please switch off your camera. Because we think this will be of value for other people. So we want to keep it recorded. Markus will have a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm sure many of you will want to have it. Don't panic, we'll share it with you. Just let me know, maybe send me privately your email address and I'll make sure you get it. I don't think I forgot anything. There are more people coming, which is great. So if you see me a bit distracted looking like in this direction, is because I'm admitting people to the room. So let me now introduce the fantastic speakers we have with us. They are Markus and Brook. Markus Trilling is the coordinator of trade, finance, and international policy. I think I got that right, for almost, okay, you'll correct me when you speak, Markus, for the Climate Action Network Europe. The Climate Action Network is a coalition of over 170 NGOs working together for a more effective climate policy in Europe. And we also have with us Brook, Riley or Raleigh, I'm not sure how you pronounce that surname, Brook.
Riley, but it really doesn't matter.
Thanks a lot. Brook works as the head of European Union affairs for the Rockwool group. And that's not an NGO, it is an industry, and it's an industry that provides stone wool based solutions with a focus to having more resilient and sustainable cities and buildings. And again, Brook will say a bit more about this in his presentation. So thank you very much to both of you for being here today. Before we get started, and while I continue admitting people, let me remind us why we're here. Let me situate us. Like I'm sure if you're here, you'll already know a little bit about recovery funds, but just to remind us collectively what happened. Last summer, the European Commission, alongside European Union countries, also known as the Council, took an unprecedented decision, which responded to an unprecedented situation, which is that our economies, the economies of the European Union, took an enormous hit from the pandemic. And so what they decided was to basically double the size of the European Union budget for the next 6 years. Now, this additional money is not part of the regular budget, and it is known, it has been dubbed as recovery funds. The reason why they've been dubbed recovery funds is precisely because the idea for many was to recover, meaning to go back to the previous normal, to recuperate, if you want. But at the same time, many people, many politicians, many institutions, experts had a slightly different, or rather quite different logic in mind, which was, instead of going back to normal, let's accelerate into the green future. And that's, if that's the logic of the funds, then they should have been called the transformation funds. That would have been my preferred way of dubbing them. So yeah, what happened basically from that point onwards is that we have a bit of a struggle between these two logics, between the logic of going back to the past or accelerating into the future. Luckily, the European Commission has put forward some conditions that play in our progressives' favor, because the Commission is asking from governments that have been allocated recovery funds to fulfill two main conditions. One of them is that in their expenditure of these funds, at least 37% has to be spent towards climate goals, meaning towards preventing, mitigating, or adapting to climate change. The remainder, the other 63%, has to be spent according to a principle called do no harm principle, which means, okay, you can invest this money in a way that does not contribute positively towards climate goals, but do not spend it in a way that contradicts or is counterproductive for those climate goals. And that's the situation we are in at the moment. We are faced with a huge opportunity for change. We are faced with an opportunity to accelerate into a green future. If these investments, if this money that has been allocated to countries, and Markus is going to explain how much money has been allocated to different countries, if this money is spent not just according to the Commission's conditions, but possibly even more ambitiously. However, we're also faced with risks, and we can already see them materializing. We can see how governments holding the hand of big corporations are playing greenwashing games. So in some of the plans for proposed expenditure that the government has presented to the European Commission, we see greenwashing exercises where activities that we know are detrimental for climate goals are actually painted in green. We can also see that these funds are mostly being made available for big corporations, for big players, for the usual suspects, for those close to the government, but not so much for small and medium enterprises, for organizations of the social and solidarity economy. It is a complex world to navigate. And so these are the two main areas that we're going to be focusing today on. Markus is going to give us an overview of what the proposals for expenditure look like this far, in terms of accelerating towards a greener future. And Brook is going to give us an overview of what that accessibility looks like, who is getting access and who should be getting access and how that can be done. So let me not speak for much longer, and I'm handing over to Markus.